Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Engaging Internal Comms. This is the show for employee engagers and internal communicators who like to keep up to date with news and developments in our profession. Hello, my name's Craig Smith from the Big Picture People. Hope you've been able to listen to the show so far. We've got 6 episodes recorded and available at our website, engagingic.com, if you've not already heard them, and they're also available on iTunes and other podcast platforms. Next week, we've got a really great interview with Sarah Carr, who's from Aviva, who's going to be giving us the 7 myths of measuring internal communications. I know measurement is something that internal communicators are always really interested in, and this is a great recording, a great interview that I've got with Sarah that I think you'll find really interesting. So I hope you can catch up with that. If you've not already done so, please sign up to our mailing list, which is available at engagingic.com. Please give us some feedback as well. We'd love to know what you're thinking about the show. If there's any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we want to be serving you and we want to be covering whatever you feel is relevant to you. So please let us know via the website. Anyway, on to today's interview. In this episode, I wanted to cover something around digital communications. I know we've talked about it in other episodes, we've touched upon it, but I really wanted to find someone who'd got some real experience of using digital, of also learning from it as well. So trying something, realizing it maybe wasn't working as well, and then pivoting and trying something else and using a different platform. And today's interview, he's got some really interesting stories about that. It's also, I think, an interesting business that she's from, which has transformed itself from a traditional way of communicating with its customers to a much more digital platform. So I think, again, what they're doing internally, interestingly, mirrors what they've done externally with their customers as well. So I think you'll find this a really interesting interview. Okay, so today's interview is with Lauren Mottram-Heathcote and from Auto Trader, and we're going to be talking all about how to get the best out of your digital communications platform. So Lauren has been internal communications manager at Auto Trader since 2017, and she's worked in a wide range of other senior internal comms roles in the finance, cosmetics, and utilities sectors. So hello, Lauren, how are you?
Good morning. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Yes. And where are you based again, Lauren?
So I'm based just outside of Macclesfield in a little village called Bollington, but I'm based at the Manchester office in Auto Trader majority of my time, and I spend a couple of days a week in the London office as well. So I do a fair bit of travelling.
Fair bit of traveling, yes. Okay, yes, absolutely. And Auto Trader, I mean, a lot of our UK listeners will be familiar with Auto Trader. I'm certainly familiar with Auto Trader. It's been a big part of my life. But for those people who don't know about Auto Trader, just give us a quick heads up as to what the business is all about.
Yeah, so the business has been around for over 40 years, and originally it was a used car magazine, a classifieds mag that I'm sure, like you say, most of our UK listeners will have probably thumbed through it at some point in their lives. So back when we were print only, it took a lot of manpower for us to do that. We circulated around 450,000 magazines per week across the UK, and it was the largest UK automotive marketplace. So what we saw through sort of the decline of print, we sort of started to go digital a bit. So at one point we had digital and print, so they were running side by side. And then at the end of 2013, the business saw a boom in that digital marketplace. So the business took the plunge to publish their last magazine and create a sole marketplace online, so that consumers could see all of their used cars in one place at one time, and it was always up to date. So rather than being in a magazine and phoning up the dealership and it being sold out, it was always up to date. So once a car was sold, it was taken offline. So that's how the business has sort of evolved. In 2015, Auto Trader was listed on the stock exchange, and it's one of the FTSE 100. And then moving forward to today, we're still the UK's largest automotive marketplace, and focus ourselves primarily digital. And we're powered by the data that we sort of get from our dealers and the customers and people that use our website to understand a little bit more about buying habits. And in the sort of around sort of every year we facilitate about, I think it's about 4.9 million vehicle transactions
Right.
across the UK, which is absolutely amazing. And I mean, in terms of our highlights, we're sort of one of the biggest UK websites, and we're more visited than sort of LinkedIn, Twitter, PayPal,
Mm.
TripAdvisor. So that sort of gives you a taste of how big we are. Um, we have around 55 million visits to our website, mobile, web, and app. And as of today, actually, we have about 530,000 cars listed on our site. So
Wow.
that includes brand new cars. So we now offer sort of cars that are ready in a dealership, ready to drive away with the most up to date registration plate, as well as that used car offering that we sort of is our bread and butter,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, we're really, really successful, and like you say, most people know about us and or will have heard about us from sort of parents, grandparents. So yeah, that's one of our sort of big things that we have is our heritage that sort of
Yeah.
brings us to the forefront of people's minds.
Definitely, yeah, no, I've sort of been on that journey with you as someone who's. I remember the old days where you used to have to take your car down and have it photographed and wait for it to come out in that week's Auto Trader and hope that you hadn't made any typos in your copy. You know, have 30 words that you could put in. So what? It's an amazing story, and I remember you saying that the visits that you get from from on the internet, it was amazing. So what sort of people do you employ at Auto Trader? So again, sort of an idea of the kind of people you're connecting with and communicating to. Just give us a flavour for sort of typical demographic. How many people work at Auto Trader?
Yeah, so in terms of the amount of employees that we have, it's around about 850, which
Mm-hmm.
if you think how many sort of visitors that we have to our site
Mm,
and how
mm,
many cars we advertise, it's not very many. In
mm.
terms of the skill sets that we have people that are on the telephones talking to our dealerships on a day-to-day basis. We have people that are working behind the scenes on all the technology platforms that we offer, and we also have obviously the support inside of the business, so HR, your finance, and that side of it.
Okay.
So, in terms of the disciplines that we have, and it's very vast in terms of the audience that we're looking for, and the audience's demands on what information they need to know.
Right.
I mean, one of the things that draws everybody together at Auto Trader is we've got a really unique culture, and our culture is all about collaboration.
Mm.
So it's quite often that we always sort of bring large groups of people together to sort of collaborate on an idea and just really move it forward at quite a quick pace. We don't
Okay.
think about standing still for too long. So, yeah, we bring sort of every area of the business together when we're trying to get a job done.
Okay, well, maybe we'll come on to that collaboration culture when we talk about specifically around the technology using. But so I met you. I met you and heard you speak at the IOIC conference in 2019 in Manchester, and you were talking about your digital journey at Auto Trader, not the digital journey you've just explained there, but more out the internal comms perspective. And you gave a really compelling story for how you were using Slack as a platform, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about what Slack is, for because again we may have some people who aren't familiar with Slack. But you started with I believe this was you didn't start with Slack. I think you said you'd started with Yammer as an initial foray into this area, and I know a number of our listeners will probably be familiar or be contemplating Yammer. And this isn't about what we're not trying to do here is say Yammer is better than Slack or Slack is better than Yammer, but just I think really more it's about the strategic side of things. So you tried Yammer. Just give us a little bit about how Yammer you implemented it and what you found was some of the challenges of using Yammer.
Yeah, certainly. So in terms of when we introduced Yammer, it was around about 2014, so a little bit before my time,
Mm,
and it was the first time the business has ever seen a social channel as such. So there was the intranet that people would have used to sort of find out information, but there was nothing around that instantaneous social aspect of collaboration.
right.
So because we have the sort of the Microsoft suite, so obviously Yammer comes as part of that. So
Mm,
the business launched it. There was never a big sort of fanfare launch of this is what we're doing, this is how it works. So it was interesting to look back on actually how the business sort of grasped hold of that platform, and
Mm.
the organic growth was really, really impressive in terms of people taking sort of taking ownership of certain areas of it, starting little groups, which was really good. And I think the effectiveness of people picking it up really quickly was the simple design, and it was very easy to sort of teach yourself how to use it, and
Yeah.
creating groups and creating those sort of areas of collaboration that were possibly outside of work. So we found things like healthy cooking channels or book clubs and, games clubs and that sort of thing. So it really works well. And in terms of it being part of a Microsoft platform, that
Yeah.
also complemented our intranet, which was on SharePoint. So it integrated really well. So once we published something on our intranet, we could then um, make sure it was published on Yammer as well. So it was sort of connected, which was really,
Yeah.
really good. But what we did find is when I joined the business in 2017, the usage of Yammer had started to decline, and no one really sort of understood why people weren't using it and what
Mm.
they were using instead. So we kept pushing with it and kept promoting things through it, but for some reason we just weren't cracking certain areas of the business, and one of the areas was mainly our technology employees, which is a fair chunk of the organisation.
Right.
And when we sort of started to look at it in a little bit more sort of detail, it was probably the beginning of 2019, and the usage was around 20%, which for us and for a channel, we were thinking there's something that we're not doing right on this, or there's
Yeah.
something better out there that will be more attractive to our technology side of the business, that will make them a little bit more excited. So it's not that, like you say, Slack is better than Yammer or anything like
Yeah.
that. It was just looking at how it worked with our business and our population
Yeah.
a
So
little bit better.
it was a case of maybe looking at, well, again, look what you said, looking at what other people were using within the business already and finding out, making it more organic in that respect. So I believe you asked around, you found out what different ways that people were finding out and keep staying informed, and I guess one of those must have been Slack, because that's where you're at now, yeah, or what you've migrated to.
Yeah, so I sort of started a little bit of investigation of what people were doing, and I'm a bit nosy, which is probably a good thing for a comms person, to be honest.
I think it
Um,
is, yeah.
However, I do like to call it curious rather than nosy. So we sort of looked, and we found there was three main areas of what people were using instead of using Yammer. So our guys that work out in the field, they were using WhatsApp to communicate between
Yeah.
the groups, which obviously is a great tool, but for us and them sharing sort of information that was specifically about the business, we didn't think that was quite right. Then there was also the use of email. So I mean, I used to get the complaint, I get too many emails. So if we used a different channel, we'd say, well, we didn't send you out an email because you got too many emails. And they say, yeah,
Mhm.
but I didn't know because I didn't get an email. And it was a bit chicken and egg situation. And then what we found was that our technology teams were using Slack. Which at that time was, we didn't pay for it as a platform. It was the free version, and you had to be invited onto the platform. So it was a bit of a unique group that were using it. So you had to be invited on. So I was chatting to one of our technology colleagues when we were away doing the induction for one of the teams,
Yeah.
and they said, "Oh, well, I'll let you join." So it was interesting to just have a little bit of a snoop around, just to see what was going on there. And actually, it really made me go, "This is a brilliant, brilliant tool."
Mm.
But where we needed to be really careful was that by introducing the rest of the business on it, we didn't want the technology team to feel that they were overpowered by the rest of the business.
Yeah.
So we had to take a really, really slow approach to it and start introducing people gradually. Um, but it was a really, really good tool to start off with, and to understand more of the benefits around how it worked and how the technology demographic were using it to its effectiveness, really. And
Yeah.
what we did find with that team was that they were saying, "Oh, if you send me an email, I won't read it. If you send me it on Slack, I'll read it." And that was that turning point and that light bulb moment that made me go, okay, now this is interesting.
Yeah.
So that's when we started to explore more around actually how can we introduce it to the rest of the business, which we obviously have done now. And we did that from the 1st of August last year, so 2019. And now what we have got is Slack is our primary comms channel, which is absolutely amazing. And to see the amount of uptake on it at the moment is brilliant. I mean, so from January to March last year, we had around 780 active users per day on the platform. So
Right.
from
Right.
850 employees,
That's
that's
pretty damn
incredible.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
And what we also found was that there was 15,000 messages sent on the platform per day.
Mm.
And if you think 15,000, that could have been 15,000 emails around the
Yeah.
business. And
Yeah.
it's just sort of taken a different stance to the way that we communicate and collaborate as well. So it's absolutely brilliant. And I mean, from March to May, where we're at now, we have 850 active users per day. So that's, I'm going to say, probably 99.9% of
Yeah.
employees are active on that platform per day.
Yeah.
And we were at the peak averaging 40,000 messages per day. However, that's sort of evened out now to about 26,000 per day.
Right.
So
Right.
it's incredible just to see how much we sort of taken this platform and just run with it. It's just been absolutely phenomenal watching the
Fun.
success of it grow.
That is amazing uptake, as you say. So I guess the question for me then, and we've just started using Slack, and we're much smaller than your organisation, and but we're really enjoying it. I mean, so you said there, 40,000, 15,000 messages a day. Why is that? Why is it better that that's in Slack? Because that's still a lot of communication going on. What are the features of Slack that you think make it a much more efficient way of communicating than email or other, more traditional ways of that, with that sort of volume and that those sorts of interactions? What is it about Slack that really works for you, you think?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, so those sort of 15,000 messages that we send per day is that's if you're in, you can create a little group. So if you're working on a
Mm,
project, you create the group for that project and put everybody into it. So rather than what traditionally you would send an email with everyone copied in and then everyone would chip in and you go to lunch for an hour and you come back and you've got sort of
yeah,
75 emails on the same chain and you're like, whoa. Whereas in Slack it's the same sort of thing, so it's all in one place but you can catch up with it really really quickly. So
mm,
what we have found is sort of different projects have got their own channels, different teams have got their own channels. We have a lot of sort of working groups that focus on things like diversity and inclusion or the women's network that we have. So there's different groups that you can be part of and join in those different conversations.
mm,
So it's, I think from our perspective, it's just a great place for everything to be in the same place at one time.
mm.
And the accessibility element of it, in terms of you've got it on your desktop and you also have the app for the phone, and the user interface for that is exactly the same. So regardless of whether you are on desktop or you're on the app, it looks exactly the same. It feels exactly the same. You get exactly the same experience.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure if you've started to use the app
yeah,
with your
yeah,
team yet, but it's definitely something that you can just have a quick, if you've got a thought, like, has anyone thought about this? And it's just a
yeah,
quick, yep, here you go,
yeah.
or link you to a different post that's it's been mentioned before. So I do think it's really, really a really good tool.
Yeah, it is. It's nice. I like the absolutely. I like the interface is the same, and I like the pull nature of the communication as well. It's not it's not with email. It's very push, and it's in your inbox whether you want it or not.
Hmm.
With Slack, you can dip in and out of the different channels and just catch up with the conversation without having to have been formally included. And I really like that. And the other, I really like the way you can integrate Google Sheets and Google Docs into it, so you can have a working document that you're collaborating on. So again, I guess I was leading on to the question I was going to ask next, which is, how does this fit with your collaboration culture? Are you using it it sounds like you're using it as a communications tool, but also as a kind of a project management tool as well? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, so like you said, you get the really good sort of integrations with that. So yeah, we it's integrated with Microsoft Teams, which we've started to use a lot more of recently, and you can also integrate it with email. So if you want to copy an email into Slack, it's really easy to do that.
Okay.
You can integrate it with your Outlook calendar. So if you're in a meeting, it gives people that status update that you're unavailable. I think the other good things are, if you've got a big group of people in something and you want to get an opinion, you can integrate it with different polls. You can integrate it with Trello and Skype, and there's so many things that you can integrate it with. I mean, one of the good things that we find that everyone uses quite often is Giphy. So if you have got something quite funny to share, or just give a reaction, a Giphy link is very, very appreciated across Sorte Trader. I think that gives us our culture a little bit more of a boost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And are you using it for any, I guess, sort of broadcast type messages? And if you've got a big announcement, are you using Slack for those sorts of messages as well, or is that less? Is it more about the day-to-day interactions?
Generally, it's around the day-to-day interactions. We do
Mm,
utilise it when we do have big announcements, but it's generally to point people to the announcement where
right.
it would be housed on the intranet, purely because what we found is if there's a long message on there, people get a bit disinterested because
Mm,
they're used to that quick, snappy sort of
yeah.
information that's contained on Slack. So generally, we'll put a little bit of an intro on there, and then the link through to our intranet site, which works really well. People interact with the message on Slack through the emojis.
Mm,
To say, a tick or a little eyes to show that they've read it, which is
yeah.
really, really good. And obviously, when it's on the internet, we can look at the analytics behind how many people have read it and interacted with it on that side of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we have done recently is our CEO came into post, well, as CEO, he used to be COO at the beginning of March. So, what we've done since he sort of moved into his new role is he's been videoing just a short update every Friday,
Yeah.
and we were uploading it directly to our intranet and then just posting the link on Slack. Now, we were getting quite a lot of sort of interaction with that. And I did think, actually, is it easier for us to post the video straight to Slack? Because
Mm,
you can play it straight from that platform rather than
mm,
moving from one to the other, which where I think sometimes people drop off. So what we've been doing is doing both. So publishing it to our intranet, but also to Slack as well.
right.
And what we found is that's been really useful because people are literally on the platform. We post it into the announcements channel, which is the main one that everyone's part of, and they can watch it there and then rather than moving between different platforms.
Okay.
So we've been monitoring that, and it is more effective. However, because Slack is quite transient, and if you've missed a couple of days, it's quite difficult sometimes to go back, especially if there's a lot of stuff going on. So we do keep it on the intranet as sort of a more sort of
Yeah.
solid place to house things if people want to go back. So yeah, so it's what yeah we've used it for both announcements and sort of the smaller updates as well. What we also find is really useful is when we've got an all company online broadcast. So we use Microsoft Live Events. Is that just sort of 5 minutes before it starts, we just do a bit of a warning. This is your 5 minute warning, and put the link to
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
rather than people going into their mailbox and finding the link that way, if they're on Slack, they're more likely to just click onto it
Pick it
and
up.
to
Yeah.
access the platform that way.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I mean, I think you're right. I think it'd be very tempting. I think to overwhelm the channel with the big announcements, but recognizing that actually one of the benefits of Slack is its brevity, and I agree with you. I've found at my peril of sending really long-winded messages to my team don't tend to get a response, whereas if I keep it brief or bullet point it, I get much more clarity over what I'm asking them to do, and because I'm trying to basically write an email in Slack, and it's not that sort of platform.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
so, um, we're recording this in spring 2020. So for everybody who's sort of listening to this sometime in the future, will probably remember what they were doing in spring 2020, and obviously in the depth of the pandemic. And you pointed me to a fantastic article on LinkedIn, which one I'll put the link into the show notes, which is all about 10 tips for maintaining engagement during lockdown, and it was a case study about Auto Trader. So as I said, when we were chatting before the interview, but I don't want to turn this into the sort of the COVID show, because there's a lot of people talking about COVID. But I think it would be remiss not to just talk about how you've been using Slack during this period, and what are some of the things you've learned from or optimized, I guess, about your use of Slack over this sort of challenging time that you're going to carry on doing, after normality, whatever that is, returns. So how have you been using it, and what are you going to retain after you get back to a sort of more normal working sort of situation?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said before, our usage and engagement in Slack is probably about 99.9% of all employees at the moment, which is absolutely
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. So I
Mm.
think, although we're going through the awful pandemic, it's been really good for us to get those people that were maybe non-believers in Slack to get into it,
Mm.
which is not been a bad thing. But what we've also found is that we've repurposed quite a few of our channels that were originally meant for when we were in the office. So in the article I talk about, we did have a channel that was about from our Manchester canteen, which basically just publicised the menu every day of what was on offer on our sixth
Mm.
floor canteen. So obviously now we're all working from home, we don't have that. So we repurposed it and called it Ask the Chef. So what it is now is that where the different people in the business can share their recipes, their tips for what they can use out of their store cupboards, especially when at the start of the pandemic and especially lockdown, when a lot of sort of ingredients weren't easily found. And it was like, what can you make from X, Y, Z, which was really good. And then what we've also got is the chefs that were in our canteen in our Manchester office are also sharing their recipes and their advice. So it's just asking them questions like, somebody said, what's the difference between sort of the rolled oats and the porridge oats? And it was just a really simple question, but nobody really knew the answer to it. So they're giving us sort of tips and advice of what to use. I mean, they did publish a recipe about using banana skins, and I was like, that's a bit too far for me. But
It's
it
like,
was about
yeah,
reducing the
yeah,
waste. Um,
yeah,
so, I mean, there's things like that which we've sort of looked at and thought, actually, there's so many members on that channel that how can we keep people engaged in that? Whereas that obviously it would be a channel that would sort of just die off until we
yeah,
move back into the office, whenever that will be. So we've started to use that, and that gets interactions sort of daily. People are very proud of what they've made or what they've baked, or stuff that they've never really tried before, and it's just showing them off. And even one of our colleagues actually has started to write their own recipe book, and they're sharing
right.
it
Oh,
on the
brilliant.
channel. And it's just things like how you can replicate things like a KFC dinner and that sort of stuff. So it's really,
Yeah.
really interesting. And then, I mean, we've got other channels as well that have been a little bit become a little bit more pertinent to our employee base. So our leadership team is called the OLT. So when we first went into lockdown, we started to have a new sort of comms channel, which was called OLTV, which was basically our directors giving an update every week around what was going on for us as a business, for our customers, our retailers, and it was really good. So what we have started to do now, there's a Slack channel that if anyone's got any questions, they can obviously post it onto this channel, and one of our senior leadership team will get back to them. So that's become a really great way to keep that engagement between
Yeah.
our employee base and our senior leaders, because we're not seeing them around the office anymore for just a quick chat and a hi, how are you? Or asking them questions in the corridor. So we wanted to keep that sort of line of communication open, especially during a time which is a little bit uncertain. People are a little bit unsettled,
Yeah.
and just understanding more about what's going on in the business, especially when we know that our sort of primary income from dealerships has sort of practically stopped because they're not
Yeah.
open to the public.
Yeah.
So we've drawn on the different areas of the business where we think, how can we keep our employees in touch with their friends from the office, their team, their wider team, and sort of just bring everyone together. And in all honesty, it's been so successful. We've seen so many more people come together, share thoughts and opinions, share their what they've been doing, books that they've been reading, recommendations to different areas of the business. We've got a channel that's dedicated to parents across the business asking for advice around homeschooling of children, activities to keep them a little bit more sane. So it's just a really good platform. Like I say, we've got a collaboration culture, which is just really sort of made that more sort of that the way that we all come together in times of need. It's just really put a spotlight on it, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great example of how, I've heard stories of organizations that have kind of, it's driven a wedge between people, whereas in others, I think it's brought people together. And I think your collaboration culture, I think what you've done here with it is, and I sense there was already a social element and a permissible social element to the way you used Slack before. But I think what I'm picking up is you've definitely used it as a way of people keeping people socially connected, probably helping them with their well-being as well. But you've also used it as a way of giving people a bit of reassurance and confidence that, we're here. We're not like just left you out, cut you out in the cold, and keeping people connected. So are you going to be keeping a lot of that going, I guess, from what you're saying? Or within reason. I mean, you're asked the chef thing. If people are actually going into the canteen and interacting with the chef, might not be as relevant, but it might be. I don't know. So, are there any elements that you think you'll keep going, moving forward, that you've learned through this episode?
Yeah, I think we'll probably keep everything going forward. I think in terms of Ask the Chef, we'll probably revert that back to the canteen menu. And
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
people can still share their recipes and that side of it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I mean, there's some things that we've started to do. So like I say, the OLTTV, which has had such a positive response that I'm now looking at how we keep that going, and maybe how we retire a few of our maybe older channels that
Mm,
might not be as successful anymore, or just maybe reduce the frequency of those channels. So
mm, mm.
it's just about how we can really move forward with the engagement that we've got with different channels that people have relied on, and they've become sort of trusted. They started to trust those channels.
Yeah,
Not to say that we've got distrust in the business, but they've become sort of something that they've used and been very familiar with. So I think we'd be foolish to sort of
yeah,
throw those away as soon as we go back to the office. Go, okay, let's like put that
yeah,
behind us now. I think we just
yeah,
definitely need to crack on with them, and especially giving it a little bit more of a facelift.
yeah.
What I keep saying is what we've done immediately was we press the reset button when we moved to working from home. We've had to revise a few of our different things that we've done. And then what we're going to do is when we move forward, it's actually reintegrating different areas of
Mm.
our comms, but also keeping those ones that we've sort of relied on during this time.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good tip in general with Slack is rotating your channels and not not letting things. Oh, we've always had that channel and we need to keep it. It's actually if
Mm.
it's redundant and people aren't using it anymore, being not being frightened about archiving it or killing it off if it's just a redundant. Because I think that's the danger with Slack, isn't it? I found this is I'll have a channel for that and I'll have a channel for that, and before you know it, you've got about 20,000 channels, and it's kind of defeats the object. And not that we did have 20,000 channels, but okay. So I'm conscious of wanting to sort of just wrap things up. So if an organization is looking to embed a digital platform, it does not necessarily Slack, but taking the learnings that you've had from the Yammer and the Slack experience, what would be your top tips for an organization that's out there thinking, yeah, we want to use a social channel like this. We've maybe tried something that's not been successful. What would be your golden nuggets to share with them?
I think from our perspective, it's all dependent on the culture that you have within your organisation. But what we've really sort of honed in on our channels is the social aspect of it. and people's
Mm.
lives outside of work, and things that make them happy outside of work. So we've got channels that are what we call the fun stuff, but they're also sort of obviously when you've got your channels on the side of your Slack toolbar, they're intermixed with the business channels as well. So you know when there's things in there. So you could 1 minute be looking at, what we would say competitor feedback. So what's going on in the rest of the industry. And then you could get a notification that someone's uploaded a cute picture of their dog in the garden. So
Yeah.
it's mixing the business with the fun stuff, which we find really, really useful. But what I also think is what we found is in our London office that they just completely did not interact with the Yammer platform at all. So it was trying to understand why they didn't do that and get people involved in the sort of
Mm.
bringing the Slack to life for that area of the business. And I think it's all about that. It's bringing a bit of the fun stuff with the business stuff, but understanding why something hasn't worked in the past and trying to sort of understand what would make it work or what would make people be more inclined to use that sort of channel.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, if they're not interested in that sort of channel, sometimes it could be that you are trying and trying and trying, and you just become a lot more disheartened with
Yeah.
trying different things. So yeah, I think definitely from an auto trader perspective, we mix the fun with the business, and then just getting under the skin of our different demographics to understand what makes them tick and how we can work things moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think the whole thing around the finding, reducing friction, finding what people are using, and kind of crowdsourcing almost what's the best app or the best platform to use. But so the other thing that you just said there, which took me back years now, thinking back to my very early days of where very pre Yammer and Slack was, we found this actually. I used to work in a factory, and what we found was that we had two notice boards. We had the kind of company notice board, which was like all of the latest information about the business, and then we had the employees notice board, which was bike for sale,
Mhm.
friend opening new hairdressing salon, 10% discount if you mention mine, and everybody always stood around that one, surprisingly enough, and nobody ever looked at the company notice board. So what we did was we merged them together, and actually we intermingled. But so you were basically in routing around trying to find where's that bike I saw for sale the other week. You did invariably end up reading a kind of a short article about the latest financial results or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was a very primitive analogy to what you've just been talking about there, which is actually mixing things up and using those channels for the sorts of things that are, I guess, what you'd call maybe the more push communications, and the pull is a good tactic, I think, in any area of comms as well. So
Mhm.
brilliant. Right. Well, that's fantastic, Lauren. Really, really interesting conversation there. Really interesting to find out about the business. What one thing I often ask always ask my interviewees is something that we didn't know about. Obviously, it's a bit of a strange question because obviously, unless any of your friends are listening in, they're probably a lot of what you've told us today is new. Have you got anything that people generally don't know about Lauren that you're willing to share with us, just to wrap things up?
So I do actually. Well, there's probably two, but so I'd never stick with one. Um, so I absolutely love learning new things.
Mm,
So when was it? Probably around 2016. I moved into a new house. It's a Victorian house, with original features. So it took me a long time to find it. But by renovating the house, it sparked a little bit of a passion inside of me to really enjoy sort of interior design. So I enrolled myself
mm,
onto a night course in interior design. So I did 12 months at Stockport College in the evenings, learning more about interior design. So that is one, which
wow.
actually, if people
Okay.
scroll on my LinkedIn profile, I have put it on as an achievement
You put
because
it
I'm
on
really
there.
proud of
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
But one of my other things in terms of the learning that I love to do is when I first finished university and got my first job working for Pets at Home, I worked in their learning and development team. And we had just started working with a local college, training our employees that worked in store to be dog groomers. So my boss said to me one day, we've just started this course. Do you want to go and see what it's like and how it works? I was like, oh yeah, that'd be amazing. So I went off for a whole week to Reese College to learn how to be a dog groomer. So I am a fully qualified dog groomer.
Wow. You're
Which,
very talented.
yeah.
Many talents.
So that's something probably a lot of people don't know about me.
Fantastic dog grooming, interior designing, and there you go. You see, if anyone's listening in who's only just finding out about you, that's fantastic. You mentioned your LinkedIn profile there. I'll put a link to that into the show notes. I'll also put a link into the fantastic article, which I definitely recommend anyone who's interested in. Well, again, it's not, it is about the pandemic, but I think just all of those elements in there are kind of evergreen learning points, I think, around using digital and particularly this integration of some of the social stuff. We'll put a link in that to the shows. Is there anything else you want to point people to other than your LinkedIn profile in that article? Anything else, any other resources that, we can put a link to Auto Trader in there as well if you want and get some even more traffic to your website.
Yeah.
Anything else, Lauren, that you'd like to steer people to?
I think for any sort of comms professional, I always sort of use resources from the Institute of Internal Comms. So just having a little look on their website is absolutely amazing, and the CIPR. So, I mean, like I say, I love to learn new things, and I'm linked in with so many people from across the comms industry. Just learning and asking people how they do something. I mean, never be ashamed to ask questions. I mean, I generally ask the most silliest questions because I use especially at work, I always say, well, I'm a comms person. Someone's going to ask me this question, so I need to know the answer. But yeah, I always think no question's a silly question. So yeah, if
Definitely
anyone
not.
has anything they want to ask, just feel free to, like I say, get in touch through LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
It's a very generous offer, and obviously, as part of that is the time you've given up today to share some of your experience. So I'm sure everyone in the community will be really appreciative of that. So thank you very much for that, Lauren. So yes, well, I think we'll wrap things up there. Have a wonderful rest of the day and the rest of the week, and thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Thank you. So, thank you for listening to Engaging Internal Comms. Hope you found this episode useful. We'd love to get your feedback and thoughts about the show. So, and also any questions or ideas that you've got for things you'd like us to cover in future episodes. So, you can email us at info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, or you can get in touch with us via the contact form on our website, which is engagingic.com. Also, you'll be able to sign up for our mailing list there, and we'll send you relevant news about the show, new episodes, and also anything that we think you might be interested in when it comes to internal communications or employee engagement. If you like the show and you haven't already done so, please subscribe to it via your podcast service. And also you can subscribe to it via the links on our podcast page, which again is engagingic.com. If you know anyone else who might be interested in the show, please distribute it to them. Please let them know about it. We want to try and grow a community of people here who are contributing to the show, giving us new ideas for episodes and things that you'd like to cover in future. So thank you very much.